George Santayana, those who do not remember the past are doomed to repeat its mistakes. A modern analog of this idea can be found in the movie Groundhog Day, where the unfortunate Bill Murray endlessly relives the same terrible day. And somewhere in the middle, of course, we remember Scotty's famous line from Star Trek, "Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on you." The older man behind the counter looked puzzled as I spoke to him. "You're probably already wondering what I'm ranting about here, right?" He nodded and adjusted his glasses. "Okay, listen to my story and you'll understand my predicament. About 3 years ago, I walked out of a building after a successful meeting with a potential client. The meeting went great, more than great, because I also met a very nice woman who agreed to have a drink with me in the evening. So I walked with my head in the clouds. I had been depressed for a while because just 7 months earlier my wife sat me down to talk. "Daniel, I need to talk to you," she said. I smiled and took her hand, but she pulled it away. "I'm going to tell you something you won't like." "What happened, Lena?" I asked. "There's no easy way to say it," she said. "I want a divorce." At first I thought I had misheard, or that this was some kind of joke. Lena always smiled and constantly made fun of me and everyone she knew and loved. "Okay, honey, what's the joke?" I asked. She looked me straight in the eyes, and I immediately realized that she was not joking this time. There was a kind of manic gleam in her eyes, as if something was wrong with her. Lena and I were married for 6 years. We had a wonderful marriage, and I loved her more than anyone else I could think of. If I had to describe Lena, I would call her sweet. She had short brown hair that flew beautifully every time she turned her head and then settled back into place. She also had sparkling blue eyes and a scattering of freckles on both cheeks. Her lips were full, and there was a sexy little mole under the right side of her mouth. Her body was small and fragile, with small but perky breasts and an incredible ass. Her legs were a little plump, but so gracefully curved. Lena was my whole world in one being, and she knew it. "Danielle, I love you too much to cheat on you, but I met someone and, well, I want to be with him," she said. "I've always prided myself on being a reasonable person and slow to anger, but that morning I just lost control. I kicked the chair I was sitting on and simply walked out of the room, not wanting to talk to her. I was remembering what she was like the other night before we had sex. She was much less enthusiastic than usual, and I just chalked it up to jet lag or fatigue. But then I realized that she probably knew even then that she was going to give me this bullshit. Her heart belonged to this bastard a full 24 hours before, but she gave me some languid, comforting night for old time's sake. I got ready and returned to the room. She sat with a frightened expression on her face. "I'll pack a few things," she said hesitantly. "I'll be back tomorrow while you're at work. I'll bring the divorce papers when they're ready." "Just go away," I said. "But you don't want to talk about," she began. "I don't want to talk to you at all," I said. "But what do we tell people?" she asked. "The truth," I spat. "That my wife is a woman of easy virtue who could not cope with her desires, and therefore left me without warning and ruined a good marriage." As my anger grew, the volume and fury in my voice increased. "Lena, just get out of my sight," I barked. "Come back tomorrow to get your things. Don't bring Mr. Wonderful to my apartment." "Daniel, I'm so sorry," she said. "None of this is your fault. It just happened." "I won't be responsible for what else might happen if you don't get out of here," I hissed. She got up and quickly left the apartment. The divorce papers arrived just a few days later. She didn't ask for anything. She just wanted to be free from me. Everyone we knew eventually realized what had happened, although I didn't tell anyone. My parents were no longer alive, but my friends were very supportive. They assured me that I had done nothing wrong, but self-doubt is not so easy to dispel. I spent several nights trying to drink myself to death. I was angry at the world and got into a few fights that I could have and should have avoided. Perhaps my staunchest supporters, oddly enough, were Lena's parents and her sister. Lena's mom called me as soon as she heard and asked what was wrong with Lena. Then her father answered the phone. He told me I had to go out there, wherever it was, and punch that guy in the face and bring my woman home, even if I had to drag her away kicking and screaming. He was sure she was on illegal substances or something else. I reminded him that Lena was not under the influence of anything when she calmly sat down and told me she was leaving and why. All I would get from his proposed course of action would be criminal charges. The kidnapping and assault charges were not part of my plans, but I thanked him for his opinion and promised to stay in touch. Lena's sister, Kimberly, was a larger version of Lena. Kim was curvier and well. She was just bigger. I don't mean to say that she was fat. Kim was and remains extremely attractive, but her personality was bigger too. Kim arrived less than a week after Lena left, determined to help me forget my sister. She started by cleaning the apartment from top to bottom and warned me not to let my needless depression change me. Don't turn into one of those bitter guys who locks himself in a dirty apartment and starts hating all women just because one idiot hurt them, okay? She said. I simply nodded as she continued her pep talk. You're a great guy, Dan, she said. If Lena hadn't met you first, I would have followed you myself. I suppose it would be strange now. We would have to wait a few years before the thought of our relationship would no longer disgust everyone. I smiled and nodded to her. I tried to think of what to say as she continued to ramble. Before I could understand what she was saying, she calmly folded the rag she had used to wipe my apartment and turned to me. Do you want to sleep with me now or after we eat? She asked. I was stunned. At first I thought she was joking, but she unbuttoned her blouse, revealing a black lace bra filled with heavenly delights that Lena would never have. The blouse fell to the floor, followed by the bra, while I was still trying to process what she was doing. I know what you're thinking, she said, smiling. You're very happy about the improvements in the size and quality of the equipment and wonder why you waited so long to kick her ass out. She slowly walked towards the sofa, motioning for me to follow her. I've dreamed about this so many times, she said, her voice thick with passion. Show me why my sister always smiled until she stuck her head too far up her ass for common sense to reach her brain. At that moment, my sense of reason and decency also disappeared. The fact that I had been happily married to her sister just a week ago no longer mattered. I had sex with Kim almost every night for the next few weeks. We never got tired of each other. If it weren't for her hormonal interruptions and my work, which sent me on a business trip for a couple of weeks, everything could have turned out completely differently. The separation helped cool our feelings and made us both realize that we couldn't continue at this pace forever. There was no resentment or anger between us. We just realized that we both needed to explore and understand what life had in store for us. Kim was incredibly helpful. She restored my confidence in myself and made me realize that the problems with Lena really weren't my fault. After that, I started actively dating other women. Kim called me often, and we spent many hot nights together. Sometimes she called when I already had an appointment. Dan, do you have any plans for tonight? She asked. Actually, yes, I answered. Then cancel them and tell me you have something urgent to do, she said, in a tone that made it clear why I should do this. Why should I do this? I teased. Usually, I would already be looking for a number to cancel the date. Ask yourself 2 questions, Danny, she said. Firstly, why are you dating this woman? Are you looking for a long-term relationship or just sex? And secondly, do I guarantee you sex? And is there even a ghostly chance that she will be as good in bed as I am? You know you would rather have sex with me. Besides my stupid sister, there is no woman you love more than me. See you at 7, I said. So, 6 months after Lena left me, events beyond my control complicated my happy single life. Like I said, I walked out of the building with this happy, stupid smile on my face. I wasn't thinking about anything else other than how my date would go when it happened. Just as I approached the edge of the sidewalk, a short woman next to me suddenly twisted her ankle while stepping from the sidewalk. I think we all heard the sound when her leg was dislocated. The car that had run the red light was speeding towards her as everyone else retreated back onto the sidewalk. Without thinking, I bent down and picked up the woman, barely managing to save her from being hit by the car. The nearest policeman jumped in front of the car and stopped it. The driver, a girl of about 20, was writing a message and did not notice what she had almost done. The policeman approached us with the woman I had just saved. "Are you okay, madam?" he asked. "Oh, you're pregnant. How far along?" The voice I've heard more times than I care to admit, and never want to hear again, answered him, and I looked at her for the first time. Her face was contorted in pain, but it was her, without a doubt. I set her down on the sidewalk next to the cop while everyone else was leaving when the light changed again. "Thank you." She began to speak through the pain, then burst into tears when she recognized me. "What's happened?" asked the policeman. "I called an ambulance. Are you in pain?" "More than you will ever know," she cried, "and my leg hurts too." The policeman spoke into his radio, and after a few brief exchanges, he looked at us. "It will take some time for the ambulance to get here," he said. "Sir, you've already done more than your fair share, but could you do one more favor?" I looked at him, thinking that he would ask me to stay with her until the ambulance arrived. Of course I was wrong. "Do you have a car nearby? Could you take this lady to the nearest emergency room?" "He has a very nice car," Lena said. "He drives a 2009 Mustang Shelby GT, but I doubt he'll want me in it. But I can't go to the hospital without him. I couldn't even go to checkups for my baby." The policeman looked puzzled. "Are you too familiar?" he asked. "He's my husband," she said sadly. "Ex-husband," I corrected. "Our divorce will be final in 15 weeks and 3 days. We haven't been together since she left me for a guy with Gale's syndrome." "Aren't Gale's that band from the 80s? Asked the policeman. "They sang Freeze Frame and a bunch of other holiday songs. What kind of syndrome do they have?" "Her new husband has the same name as their lead singer," I said. The policeman scratched his head. "Who was their lead singer?" he asked. "A guy named Magic Dick," I said in a dead voice. "Oh," Lena moaned in pain. She looked at me and more tears flowed from her eyes. "Look, buddy, could you just leave it and take her?" asked the policeman. "I know it's a lot, especially under these circumstances, but you seem like a decent guy. You were the only one who tried to help her. The rest of the people were just trying to save themselves. I need to write a ticket to that stupid girl who almost killed your wife and her child and confiscate her car." "Ex-wife," I corrected through clenched teeth. Emphasis on ex, and if I had known it was her, I wouldn't have tried to help her. "Madam, you said something about not being able to go to the hospital without him," the policeman said. "I'm still covered by his health insurance until the end of the calendar year," Lena said. "Although I didn't think I'd need it, but I don't have any insurance cards to prove it. So if he doesn't come with me, I won't be accepted," Lena said. There was a thin layer of sweat on her forehead, and I could tell that the pain was causing her great discomfort. "People without insurance are also being treated," the police officer said. "They have to. It's the law." "When we got divorced, I had a job," Lena said. "I also had money in the bank. Daniel and I split our assets in half, so since he made more money than me, I actually got some of his money. All of this was stolen from me, but because of my previous income and the amount received at divorce, I have no right to any help. I literally have no money, and in a few days I will have nowhere to live." "I'll take her to the hospital if you carry her to my car in the parking lot," I said sharply. "Daniel, you don't have to take me," Lena said sadly. "I know that after everything I've done, you have every right to hate me." "Oh, I hate it so much," I said. "A lot more than you can imagine. But I have things to do tonight, and taking you to the hospital seems like the quickest way to get back to my plans." "Wow," she said sarcastically. "I remember the time when you wanted to spend every second with me." "Yes, that was before I knew what kind of woman of easy virtue you are," I spat. "I'm not looking forward to it, so if you'd rather arrange alternative transportation, that's fine with me." "Maybe this isn't the best idea," the policeman said. "Relax, officer," Lena said. "He would never hurt me, but if he did, I would deserve it. I'm the one here who usually ruins everything. The policeman picked Lena up, and together we placed her in the small space of my Mustang. As we were putting her feet down, I noticed how swollen her ankle was and realized she was in a lot more pain than she was letting on. During the ride, she tried several times to start a conversation, but I refused to engage and finally told her that I was only interested in getting her to the hospital and nothing else. We spent the rest of the trip in silence. When we arrived at the hospital, things didn't go as smoothly as I expected. There were forms to fill out and other documents to sign while they examined Lena. I constantly tried to explain to them that Lena and I are not only not related, but also do not love each other. I thought about punching the next medical professional who asked me if Lena's baby was our first. I doubted that any of them could understand the pain and rage I felt. Standing there and fending off questions about my ex-wife, the woman of my dreams, was unbearable. I didn't understand why she couldn't just call Mr. Charming and let him take care of everything. He must be concerned about the well-being of Lena and their child. But when you add constant questions about what she was carrying in her womb, it was pure torture. Finally, they directed me to the room where Lena was awaiting the results of her X-rays. She was lying in bed with her leg raised. I wanted to ask her why they didn't put her in a cast and send her home. When I entered the room, several people looked at me. The doctor came up to me and smiled. "Mr. Boone, your wife has several problems that we need to address. I won't even ask why. With your insurance and the amount you earn, she hasn't had regular checkups. But from now on, we will make sure that the baby is healthy. Her condition is very manageable with medication. As for her ankle, she is badly broken. Her bones are very fragile due to a lack of certain nutrients in her diet. The baby seems to be pumping everything she needs out of her body. It will require surgery to fix the ankle, followed by a cast for 6 to 8 weeks. We also put her on a special calcium program and diet to help her gain weight to a healthy level. We put her on anti-inflammatory drugs to reduce the swelling in her ankle before surgery. We'll need you to fill out some forms about surgery and calcium supplements. Our nutritionist will talk to you about the foods she should eat. And of course, there are some things you need to know about how to care for her." He smiled at me and went off to play video games or whatever doctors do when no one is looking. "Why don't any of these people want to listen to me?" I said. "Because they are so confident that they know everything. They sometimes forget the basic facts of a situation," Lena said. "They see me in your insurance, they see that we have the same last name, and that's enough for them. In their eyes, we're still married and expecting a child." "So why didn't you try to explain it to them?" I asked. "Danny, it's hard to understand and come to this yourself. If I myself can't believe it, then how can I explain it to others?" "Why try to explain the past to them?" I asked. "Just pick up the phone and call Mr. Wonderful and let him take care of you and his baby." I felt like an ass when I saw her burst into tears. "You can always call your family," I said. The tears continued to flow without stopping. In fact, they have become even stronger. "Danny, my mom and dad don't want anything to do with me," she cried. "They won't talk to me since I left you. You know how rigid they are in their views of right and wrong." "Lena, don't call me Danny or those pet names. My name is Daniel, and I'm sure your parents will understand. After all, the child you're carrying will probably be their only grandchild for a while," I said. "Things like that usually overshadow everything else." Daniel, I'm really scared. I know I have no right to ask this, but could you stay with me until the end of the operation?" she asked. There was a pleading in her voice, and the look in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. She was really afraid. "Why the hell should I do this?" I asked. "Why should I care about your fear or anything? It's not my job anymore, remember? You replaced me a while ago." The pain in her eyes pierced me. I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy the opportunity to twist the knife a little more. The ringing of my phone in my pocket interrupted further communication for a few moments at least. "Danny, I haven't seen you in a week," Kim said over the phone. "What are you doing tonight?" I might need some dental work. Damn it, everyone wants my insurance? I chuckled. Not real dental care, you stupid, Kim said sharply, jokingly. I've got cavities that need filling, you know. I kind of have a date, and I have one problem, I said, moving away from the bed. Cancel the date and tell me the problem, she said. You know the rules. Call your new girlfriend and say something. Family comes first. Now tell me the problem. Maybe you should see it for yourself. Maybe it's your problem too, I said. I gave her the address and room number and promised to stay there until she arrived. Lena just looked at me when I returned to her. Who was that? She asked with a hint of bitterness in her voice. Old friend, I said. This is someone who really cares. She just lay on the bed, looking at me, while several nurses came in to check on this and that. Danny, she began. My icy gaze silenced her. Daniel, I meant, she began again. We never had a chance to talk about. That was all I could bear. Why the hell would I ever want to talk about this? I exploded. The nurse in the room looked at me as if she was deciding whether to call security. Kim entered the room and looked around. When she saw me at the window, she changed both her manner and her gait and walked straight towards me. Why are you in the hospital? Don't tell me you're visiting a sick friend, huh? That's just like you. I pointed to the bed. Lena's belly almost completely covered her face from where we stood. Kim looked at the bed and recognized her sister. What happened to you? She asked coldly. Then she looked at me. Please tell me you don't fall for it. I can only save you so many times. You have a date tonight, right? She simply shook her head. I can't believe it. I have to call Mom and Dad. I'll call you later, son-in-law. Then she left as quickly as she came. See what I'm talking about, Lena said from the bed. Even the people who are supposed to be my family don't want anything to do with me. I didn't know what to say to her, so I just looked at her. She looked so different, yet somehow the same. I mean physically, other than being pregnant, a normal person would think she looks the same as when she left me. But someone who knew her well would have noticed the differences. The sparkle in her eyes disappeared. The feeling of confidence with which she looked at the world also disappeared. There were small bags under her eyes, and the pop in her personality was gone. Everyone always talks about how pregnant women have an incredible glow, but Lena wasn't having it. It was like watching a cornered dog about to drown in a huge bath of its own liquefied shit. Lena saw me as her only lifeline. I didn't know what to do. On the one hand, I hated her as much as everyone else. She deserved everything that happened to her, and even more for what she did to me. I could sympathize with her family because they came from a very religious background, and what she did embarrassed them within their close church circle. They were almost considered failures as parents for raising a woman of easy virtue. On the other hand, call me weak or weak-willed, but I felt sorry for her. She went from a lively and beautiful woman to this lifeless lump of crap in a very short time. Of course, she hurt me a lot, but I got over it and am coping well now. It seemed like her antics only hurt her. I was sure there was a story here, but I just didn't care enough to hear it. I stood there looking at her with all these thoughts running through my head. Daniel, come here so I can talk to you, she said. I turned to face her and walked a little closer to the bed. She smiled for the first time, and then she laughed a little, but I noticed that even smiling caused her pain. Daniel, I'm not going to bite you, she said. You can sit on the edge of my bed. I'm not going to try to hurt you. I did as she asked and felt strangely tense. I couldn't understand why, but there was a terrible tension between us that had never existed before. Danielle, I understand why you hate me, and you probably should. I never thanked you for saving my life and the life of the child down there on the street, and I really should, but I can't stop thinking that maybe it would be a blessing. She smiled a sad smile. She was so different from my Lena. My Lena believed in life no matter what. My Lena was like that little orphan who always sang that the sun would come out tomorrow. I wondered what had turned her into this sad version of the woman who had just implied that if I hadn't pulled her out from under the car, she and her baby would have been better off. I realized then that no matter how much I hated her, there was no point in kicking her when she was already lying on the ground. If that happened, she continued, all our problems would be solved. I looked at her like she was crazy. Danny, even with you letting me use my insurance, it will only increase my debt, she said. This is a short-term solution that will cost me even more in the long run. Lena, most of the forms I signed make me responsible for any expenses that insurance doesn't cover. So when they find out you can't pay, the bills will come to me. So don't worry, Lena. Look at it like this. A parting gift from me to you and your child, I said. If it's a gift, can I choose it? She said. I looked at her strangely. I wonder what could be more important than paying the bill for the surgery she was about to undergo. Danny, I'm scared, she blurted out through tears and sobs. They're going to cut my leg open and do something there. They're going to put a piece of metal into me to hold my bones in place. They've already told me there's a chance I'll walk with a limp for the rest of my life, and the risk of another joint damage is increased. I'm more afraid of this than of not being able to pay the bill. Danny, more than anything, since you're in a generous mood, I want you to just put aside what happened between us and stay with me until I'm taken to surgery. The last nurse who came in said I thought it wouldn't take more than an hour. The swelling in my ankle was almost enough for them to do the surgery without damaging the tissue further. Could you do that? She asked. Just sit here and talk to me so I'll be less stressed about them cutting my body and doing things to it. I know I did you a terrible thing and you didn't deserve this. If I live 1,000 years, what I did to you will always be the worst thing I've ever done in my life, and I don't deserve forgiveness. I'm not asking you to forgive me, Danny. I just want you to sit down and talk to me for a while. There was a time when you loved me more than anyone on the planet. At least that's what you told me, and I believed when you said it, there was something in it. And I love. Stop it, I said sharply. The venom in my voice instantly cut off her words, turning the last word into an inarticulate mumble in my throat. Don't ever say that to me again. She nodded and turned away from me. A single tear rolled down her cheek as she realized she had messed everything up again, and I was even angrier at her for what she started saying than before. After a few moments of very awkward silence, I allowed myself to exhale. It all came out in an almost silent sigh, and most of the new anger went with it. Don't ever say that to me again, I said. She nodded, understanding what I meant. I took out my iPhone and went to the contact screen. The sound of a dial tone in my ear made it clear that the call was going through. Hi, Melissa, I said sadly. This is Dan. I'm at the hospital. I'm afraid I can't make it tonight. Someone I was very close to is going into surgery, so I'm here for a while. I understand if you're mad at me, but I really can't leave now. A sharp click made it clear that she had hung up. Oh, Lena said. She looks angry. She probably really wanted to go with you. Sorry, Daniel. I just sighed again. So where is Mr. Charming? I asked. Did you call him? Now it was her turn to sigh. We're not together, she said. Do you want to know why? 2 words, I said. No and no. Then what are we going to talk about? She smiled. Danny, can you sit a little closer to me? I swear I won't bite you. I know you think I'm disgusting and hate me and all that. But I'd like to pretend, just for a few moments, that I haven't ruined my life. I walked closer to her and she smiled. I think when I got close enough for her to touch me, it gave her courage because she reached out to take my hand. Lena, don't touch me, I hissed. The venom in my voice made her instantly withdraw her hand. The pain in her voice was so thick that I could feel it. I thought we were pretending everything was fine, she said. I'm not that good an actor, I spat. We sat there for a few moments in silence. Danny, if I can't touch you, I have another idea, she suddenly said. She smiled more than she had since I met her. She almost seemed like the same Lena. Can I touch your jacket? She asked. I nodded, not understanding what she was up to. Close your eyes, she said. I did as she asked and soon felt her hands grab my sleeve. I heard the rustle of fabric, and then she guided my hand again. Then I touched something that had no explanation. It felt like leather, but the kind of leather I had never touched before. I suddenly opened my eyes and looked at her. It was as if an electric current passed through me from the contact. I knew then that my life had changed forever. And to make things worse, I looked at Lena and saw the biggest, stupidest smile on her face. It was as if the contact had created some kind of connection or feedback loop between us. But the connection was not only two-way. The slight trembling of her belly let me know that someone else had felt the contact and was reacting to it. "She knows you're here, Danny, and she's happy too," Lena said. I recognized the tone in her voice. That was the tone she always got when she really wanted sex. I abruptly pulled my hand back and stood up. But I knew at that moment that I was trapped. Lena, of course, misunderstood my reaction. "Danny, I'm sorry," she said. "You did so much for me today. I wanted to give you something. I have nothing else. People always ask to touch my belly. I think there's something special about touching a pregnant woman's belly. I just wanted to give something to you. That's all I have." The tearful tone in her voice made it clear that she was sincere. She wasn't trying to make me uncomfortable. "I ruined everything again, didn't I?" she asked. Tears ran down her body. "Lena, it's okay," I said. "It was actually magical. I've never felt anything like this before. It was incredible. You and Mr. Charming are very lucky." "Yes," she said sarcastically. She then started to say something, but the arrival of the nurse interrupted her. We all have moments when communication with another person goes beyond words and our mental perception. This is called soul-to-soul communication. I don't know why I thought about the Power Station then. Power Station was a one-off band formed by members of Duran Duran, drummer Tony Thompson from Chic, and some English singer whose name I don't remember. They had a song called Communication that went through my head at the time, and every time I think about that moment, I knew on a level far beyond mental what she was going to tell me. "What, Lena?" I asked excitedly. She quickly shook her head as the nurse checked her again. "Nothing, Daniel," she said. "Thank you. I really mean it, Daniel. Thanks for sticking with me." She yawned as the anesthetic they gave her began to take effect. "Thank you very much. Have a nice life, Danny. None of this was your fault." She began to speak unintelligibly as she lost consciousness. "It's all my fault, Danny. Blame it on the woman of easy virtue. Giving away the best thing in my life. Stupid woman of easy virtue. Love you, Danny. Always will. Forever and always. Love you." Then she passed out. The nurse looked at me and said the surgery would take about 2 hours, and that might be a good time to see the nutritionist before she left for the day. I could see her and also talk to the physical therapist to find out what Lenz can and can't do after surgery. She told me that late pregnancy is terrible and inconvenient, but going through the late stages of pregnancy while unable to walk would be hell for Lena and for me. "There will be days when she wants to bite your head off for nothing," she said. She would have mood swings that would be completely uncontrollable. I remember the day my husband just walked into the kitchen. I threw a cast iron frying pan at his head. For a moment my hormones were so out of whack that I wanted to kill him that he got me pregnant. She laughed when she saw my terrible expression. I think the hormones made me forget that I begged him to do this. I loved this man so much that I needed to have a child with him, but at that moment, in that moment, if I had 2 frying pans, I would kill him. "But I don't," I began. We don't. "This woman loves you at least as much as I love my Phil," she said. "Whatever you're going through, you'll get through it." She smiled and patted my hand, and then went to help another nurse wheel Lena away. As I stood in the empty room, trying to decide what to do, my phone rang again. I answered without thinking about who it could be. "Why aren't you here?" Kim asked. "Oh, damn, she got you again, huh? Mom told me this could happen. Please don't tell me you're still in the hospital. Danny, I can't save you from being stupid. That woman is lying there, pregnant from the guy she left for, and you just stand there soaking up all the crap she comes out with. She's trying to get you back. Stupid mom told me she showed up at their house a few weeks ago trying to tell them something pathetic. The story that he left her. If you hadn't moved, she probably would have come to your house. She probably still returned to the apartment where you two lived. I just listened to her rant on the phone. Danny, leave her. She'll do this to you again. Did you know that Mom and Dad were practically kicked out of the TA at church? The rest of the people on the committee decided that Mom and Dad couldn't give parenting advice or help with making decisions about family matters because they are such terrible parents. Mom can't teach Sunday school anymore. They said that because their daughter is a woman of easy virtue. It somehow came from her that Lena is hurting you again. Danny, I just don't want to see this happen to you. Call me when you get home. As I stood there, processing her words, it all made sense, but nothing mattered. I knew that Lena's parents were very traditional and very involved in their church, but now the reason why they literally turned their backs on their daughter became clear. It still had nothing to do with me, and no matter how much I hated Lena, my opinion was already formed. Go or sit on the potty, boy. The words snapped me out of my thoughts. I looked into the friendly face of one of the hospital cleaners. He was trying to clean the room while Lena was in surgery, and I was standing in the middle of the room. I left the room, apologized to him, and went to the nutritionist. She was a middle-aged woman, slightly plump, with a pink face and an angelic expression. The entire time she was telling me about the types of vitamins and foods Lena needed to take for pregnancy and what she needed to get her levels back up, I had one stupid thought. If nutritionists are experts on diet and nutrition, why are so many of them fat? But I listened to her every word and recorded her sentences on my iPhone. I made a huge shopping list. As part of the choice offered to me by the cleaner, I decided to go potty. I didn't care about Mr. Charming or his absence, or even about Lena. I did it for someone else. I was also less willing to listen to the physical therapist. This woman didn't seem all that nice, and it was true that the baby would be born before Lena's leg cast came off, and we didn't even have to think about physical therapy until the cast was off, or nearly so, because of the long delay caused by finding and listening to two experts. And because Lena's surgery went so smoothly, she was already in intensive care when I returned to her. I had to wait for some time before I was allowed to see her. But it didn't really matter because she was unconscious anyway. An hour later, she returned to her room when her eyes first fluttered and then opened. I looked up from the game I was playing on my iPhone. "Danny," she said, "why are you still here?" Tears were streaming down her cheeks, and I looked at her with a rough expression. "No one, not even you, should have to go through something like this alone," I muttered. "Visiting hours ended a long time ago. The nurses agreed to let me stay until you woke up so someone would be here for you." I hesitated because it was a big step. "Yes," she asked. "I'll see you tomorrow," I said. "Will you come and see me again?" she asked incredulously. "No, Lena," I said. "I'm coming to take you home. Your ankle surgery was minor. Usually, they only keep you in the hospital for a few hours after surgery. But since your surgery was so late and no one knew how long it would take for you to wake up, your discharge was scheduled in the morning. The good news is that we won't have to pay for a follow-up visit because your doctor will be able to see you in the morning before we go home." Her face frowned then. "What happened, Lena?" I asked. She shook her head and tried to smile bravely. "Have you ever done something so bad that every time someone says something to you, no matter how unrelated it is, it just reminds you how stupid you were?" I had no idea what she meant, so I just shook my head and told her good night. In the morning, the circus began. First, we had to wait for Lena's doctor to finish his rounds before he could do a post-op exam so she could be discharged. One of the nurses called him, and we learned that we would have to wait almost an hour before he came. I wanted to go shopping, but Lena begged me to stay with her. I didn't understand why. She said something stupid about wanting to spend as much time with me as possible. Finally, the doctor quickly entered, wondering why there were so many dissatisfied faces in the room. The nurses had patients who needed this room. Housekeeping staff had to clean the room before it could be assigned to someone else. And I wanted to get Lens out of there because I needed to leave her before I could even start shopping. I think the doctor thought the sun was shining out of his ass and that everyone was happy to wait for his instructions. Anyway, they finally got Lena into one of those leg-raised wheelchairs. One of the things I was told was that we needed to keep her leg elevated as much as possible. I knew this wouldn't happen in the car because the interior of my Mustang wasn't spacious. I went and picked up the car and drove up to the door, and we put Lena in the front passenger seat. I smiled at all the nurses and thanked them. I took care of Lena, and she smiled and cried at the same time. "What happened now?" I asked. "We won't drive for hours," she said. "I might be uncomfortable for a few minutes, you know, but you take care of me and adjust the seat belts. It's been a while since anyone even pretended to care about me." I didn't have the heart to tell her that I really didn't care about her. When the car started, she noticed vibration from the powerful 5.0-liter V8. I think she didn't notice it yesterday because she was in so much pain. When we got onto the highway and I let the car accelerate, I noticed the look on Lena's face. "What's happened?" I asked. "This is not the road to the shelter," she said. "Which shelter?" I asked. "I live downtown in a women's homeless shelter," she said. "At least for now. They limit how long you can stay there, so I'll have to find another place soon. Where are we going?" "Lena, I have to take care of you and your baby," I said. "I'll take you home with me." She turned and looked at me as if I was crazy. "You don't have to do this, Dan," she said. "It's too much, really." "So you don't want me to take care of you?" I asked, slowing down the car. "Yes, very much," she said quickly. "But I would never ask you to do that in a million years. You realize this whole thing would have been better if you had let me do the shopping while we waited for that stuck-up doctor. Now I have to take you home, then go out shopping and come back," I said. "Danny, I didn't know I was staying with you," she said. "I wanted to spend as much time with you as possible." I got the car up to speed again and stayed just under the speed limit for the rest of the way. When we got off the highway and into my neighborhood, Lena's head was spinning like it was on a hinge. "Where are we?" she asked. We pulled up to my house, and she looked at me like I was crazy. "Why are we stopping here?" she asked. I took the remote control from the visor and opened the garage. I drove in and walked around the car to help her get out. I picked her up carefully at her feet and carried her out onto the deck while I fiddled with the lock on the sliding glass patio door. "Welcome to your home for the next few months," I said. Her eyes were huge. "When did you acquire all this?" she asked. "When you left, I was very close to getting a promotion at work," I said. "When I stepped into my new role, with nothing to occupy my time at home, I became more focused on work. I also have the freedom to travel for the company. That has some benefits." "Danny, you could have traveled before," she said quietly. "No, Lena," I said. "I couldn't. Being with you was much more important than any job. If I were offered to become the president of the company in exchange for frequent travel, I would choose to be a janitor and stay with you." She didn't say anything, just looked around. I think she thought I didn't see her cry. "What is this?" she asked, pointing to a large rubber oval at the edge of the terrace. "Oh, it's a swimming pool," I said. "I covered it this morning because I didn't want your baby to fall in it. I need to install some baby safety fences for the pool." "Danny, you know how stupid that is," Lena laughed. Her laughter was magical. "It's about a month before she's born, and almost a year after that before we let her crawl. She's safe, but maybe her mom might like the pool. If my leg wasn't in that cast, I'd be right now. I begged you to let me into it." "It's so strange, Danny. I never imagined you would do something like that," she said. "I never thought I'd have the chance to talk to you again, no matter how much I prayed for it." I've never been a big fan of prayer, so I let this comment fall on deaf ears. I opened the door and took her inside. As one would expect from a woman, she examined everything she saw. She looked around the whole house. "Do you want me to put you in your room or the living room?" I asked. "I have a room," she said in a quiet voice. "Well, until now it was one of the guest rooms," I said. "There are 4 bedrooms in the house. I turned one of them into a home office. My computer and everything is in there. I'll stay in the living room, she said. Just the thought of watching what I want on TV without 20 other single or expecting mothers seems like a luxury. Then she fell silent. I put her on the sofa, brought her Pepsi and chips to snack on while I was away. Lena, what fruit would you like? I asked from the kitchen. Dan, you know more about what I like and don't like than any person on the planet, she said, smiling. Just bring me what you want me to eat. I turned around and saw her sitting comfortably on the sofa. I went to the linen closet and opened the door. I covered her with a blanket and left the house to do some shopping. The next few days were amazing for me. Lena was coming out of her shell and her glow was returning. I don't know if this was a result of her being taken care of day in and day out, or simply because she misunderstood what I did and why. But she was starting to look and act like my Lena again. A very pregnant Lena, of course, but Lena nonetheless. It is rare that anyone enters into cohabitation without friction and conflict. There will always be little ups and downs. We had ours, but the biggest one happened on the Sunday of that first week. I have a habit of going out on Sunday mornings and doing my longest run of the week. This Sunday, I went out to run 10 miles. I thought when I got back, I would make a big Sunday breakfast for Lena and I, but that didn't happen. I returned home on Sunday, tired as expected, but I didn't expect to hear two women yelling at each other. My entry into the house did not make the situation any better. I poked my head into the living room and two furious eyes stared at me before I could retreat. Danny, what the hell is she doing here? Both said it at the same time. If they weren't so mad at me, it might be funny. Kim came up to me. I came here to swim on Sunday morning and make breakfast for you. I know how tired you are after your long runs, she said. And what do I find? The pool is closed even though summer isn't over yet, and then I find Skinny McGillicuddy on your couch. Care to explain that? She asked, pointing to her sister. Well, I was awake and usually had breakfast ready for me since I can't move around easily. I was expecting us to have a good conversation like we've been doing all this week. Then I heard the door open. I thought, since the person used the key, it had to be you. Imagine my surprise when I found out that my sister had the key to your house, Lena said. Your mom and dad have a key too, I said. They like to use the pool or spa sometimes. They're all I have left of my family, and they like to check on me sometimes since. Well, you know. So you're saying she can come anytime she wants? Lena asked. So I won't have any privacy even in my. She stopped abruptly. Sorry, Dan, she said. Sorry, Kim. Sometimes I forget that part of my life is over. I'm not the best guest, but Kim started screaming first. I'm sorry I yelled at you, Lena, Kim said. I'm really mad at Danny. You don't know what I had to go through to make him human again after you abandoned him and left without warning or explanation. I feel like I wasted all this time. Oh, I understand perfectly, Lena replied sarcastically. Danny lending a helping hand to some vile prostitute just pisses you off, even if that prostitute is your sister, who loved you until you and our parents turned on me when I needed you most. You tried so hard to help Danny forget me, and I dared you to come back and drag him back into the dirt and shit with me. This is completely understandable. You bitch, if you really want to talk about this, then go ahead, Kim grimaced. Yeah, I'm mad at Danny because you just ran away from him without warning and without any reasonable explanation, and then you waltz your worthless ass back into his life when he was ready to move on without you. The woman he was supposed to go on a date with this week was prettier than you, better built, and much smarter. I saw a possible future for him and happiness ahead. I saw this house full of love and laughter and children who could have been my nephews and nieces. And now, with your return, all I see is pain for him, because I still don't understand why you won't do the same thing to him again. So tell me, you worthless creature, Kim hissed. Did you even think about Danny once before you left him? Have you ever thought about how the narrow-minded people in the church will treat mom or dad, or how people will look at me after this? Lena began, and then burst into tears. Sorry, Danny, Kim said. I'm leaving. I'm sure you talked to her and you decided something, but I'm not staying here to watch you hurt yourself again. It hurt enough the first time when you had no choice, but it's just torture to have to look at you when all you have to do is kick her out, just like she threw away your feelings for her. Lena, you are my sister, Kim said sadly, and you're right, as a child I loved you and admired you. But you have no right to hurt him twice. Whatever you decide, whatever petty scam you have on him, that's okay. But mark my words, when you're done with him and decide to move on to your next one or whatever you call them, I want him intact. If you hurt him again, I will find you and you will regret it. Kim turned to leave and Lena called after her. Kimmy, Lena screamed, I never asked Daniel to let me stay here, and I have no intention of hurting him. We're not trying to solve anything, and no matter how much I try to talk about what happened to us and me, Dan doesn't want to talk about it. As soon as the baby is born and my leg heals, I already know that I will leave here. Luckily for me, Dan is much kinder to me than my own family. He doesn't want to see the baby born in a shelter for homeless single mothers, no matter how my family views it. And you're also wrong about the rest. I, more than anyone else in the world, know how stupid what I did was. I lost the best and most important part of my life over nothing. I'll have to live with this for the rest of my life. I don't need you to tell me how special what I lost was. Lena's tears and her honesty melted Kim's anger a little. Kimmy, I don't even want to try to ruin anything that makes Daniel happy. Please don't leave or stop visiting him because I'm here. From now on, if you call ahead, I'll stay in my room and you won't even know I'm here. The same goes for Mom and Dad. You all can just pretend that the woman of easy virtue has disappeared, and so has her child. Kim simply turned around and walked away. Lena looked at me and shrugged. Sorry, she said. I actually didn't know my sister had a key to your house. Communication is an important part of a relationship, and Lena and I didn't have that. We talked a lot. I had a cleaner who came several times a week to keep my house from looking like a bachelor's pad. Most of the time she came and went while I was at work. I paid her extra to come a few more days and help Lena so that I could work. It's funny, but although Mrs. Hayes, the cleaning lady, and I rarely spoke, we understood each other much better than Lena and I did. Lena and I constantly talked to each other. Almost every second from the moment I walked in the door until we went to bed in our separate rooms, we were chatting about this or that. We talked about how I decided to buy a house and what I would like to do with it. We talked about my new position and new responsibilities and where I see myself going in the future. Sometimes we talked about things we both wanted to do. Very rarely did we mention the past. It didn't seem like a big deal, but in fact it was. Everything we talked about was just talk. We didn't talk about what really mattered or our feelings. This lack of communication meant that Lena and I had completely different expectations and ideas about what was going on between us. Lena truly believed that we were getting closer again and that our relationship was being restored. She hoped that we were moving toward some kind of reconciliation, and since our divorce wouldn't be final until after the baby was born, maybe we could call it off. On the other hand, although I didn't hate Lena as much as before, I had no intention of starting anything over with her. All I knew was that from the first time I touched her pregnant belly, I became obsessed with it. I started to think that maybe I had some kind of fetish for pregnant women. But the thing is, I didn't feel any connection with Lena. I seemed attracted to the child in her womb. Our connection may have been superficial or weak at best, but I felt so sorry for this child. She reminded me of myself. Her father was not in the picture, and she would be denied the opportunity for life that she should have had because of someone else's selfishness. Her father has apparently disappeared. I didn't care how or why. Lena and I never really sat down and discussed it. She tried to bring up this topic several times, and I stopped her. In my case, the life I should have had was taken away from me due to Lena's selfishness and her need to satisfy her baser instincts. So for me, the child and I were the same. We were both let down and abandoned by the people who were supposed to love us. There was a time when just Lena's smile would make my day. But now, when she looked at me and smiled, my skin began to itch. Some nights when I would take her out to the deck and lay her gently on one of the sun loungers and rub lotion on her belly to help with the stretch marks, it was obvious that she really thought there was something going on between us. "Oh, Danny, you don't know how good this feels," she said. "I wish these nights could last forever." I didn't say anything because I didn't want to upset her, but my thoughts were more about whether I could sneak Kim in for a quickie. Kim and I were still dating. In fact, it seemed like we were seeing each other more often since Lena came back into my life. I think it was her way of checking on me and making sure I was okay. One of the things I couldn't understand was what was going on between me and Kim. Kim was weird. When we had sex, she gave herself completely to it. She was losing control. She said whatever came into her head and didn't hold anything back. She told me she loved me, and I knew she meant it. But at the same time, I knew that I was not the only guy who had sex with her. She dated the same way I did before Lena returned to my life. Kim also expected me to date and often gave other women my phone number and told them to call me. One of the things she did recently scared the crap out of me. Kim sat up and looked at me. "Sorry, baby," she said. "I don't know what came over me." I just looked at her. "Kim, I love you already," I said. "You're the one who's stopping us from being more than just friends with benefits." "We are so much more than that," she said. "We are more like relatives with privileges. But Danny, you just don't see things clearly right now. Maybe you need counseling or something to get rid of the crap in your head. I'm not the one who's stopping us from moving on. Never been. But I'm just not crazy enough to get into a relationship with a guy who loves someone else. Kim, I don't love anyone but you. I may be a little scared of what happened to me because of your sister and afraid to move on, but believe me, it's not what you think," I said. "You just haven't seen it yet," she said. "Now you think you hate her, and the thought of having sex with her is so disgusting to you that it just makes you sick. But the only reason for such a strong emotion is that you still feel something for her. Of course, you're still angry about what she did to you, but I think your feelings for my sister are still as deep as they always were." Time flew by, and a week before Lena's due date, I was woken up by her scream. I ran into her room without even bothering to put on a shirt. I turned on the light, and she fell silent. "Oh my God, I forgot what a beautiful torso you have," she said in shock. "Lena, why were you screaming?" "Oh, you wet the bed," I said. "Why didn't you call me earlier? I would have taken you to the bathroom." "Jesus, Danny, I don't pee that much," she snapped. "My water broke. I think you'd better call work and say you won't be coming in today. She's ready to come out." I started to panic. "But it's not time yet," I said. "She's ready?" "Danny, it's not like we're baking a cake. I'm sure she's ready. It may have simply developed a little faster, or the doctor may have been off by a few days with the date of conception. I somehow expected this. I'm sure I knew from the very beginning when I conceived. Now take me to the hospital." "Oh man, I was going to clean my Cherokee and check the battery this weekend," I said. "We'll need to dry you thoroughly." I thought she was too wet to put in my Mustang. I didn't think this thing would ever come out of its skin. But then I realized that the baby I was so attached to was about to be born, and suddenly the car didn't seem so important anymore. Mustang was more important than Lena, but not more important than her child. The hospital staff knew everything about Lena and me. We have become regulars over the past few weeks. So when I brought her into the emergency room, they brought a wheelchair and immediately called her doctor. They began to examine her and immediately took her to the maternity ward. I went to the front desk to give them our insurance information. Luckily, they still had all the details in their database, and they gave me some quick documents to sign and sent me off to the maternity ward. I was in the waiting room getting ready to sit down and make some calls when the nurse came and got me. She looked really angry, and I didn't understand why. "Why are you here?" she asked. "I brought Lena to give birth, and after I filled out all the paperwork, they told me to come here," I said. "They said to come to this department, but not to this room," she spat. "Are you afraid of something? Well, she needs you to be bold, so just push it, buddy. You can throw up later. All men do this. But now I need you to get ready and come here." "Where exactly?" I asked. "To the maternity room, of course. Don't you want to see your baby come into the world?" she asked, as if I was committing some sin. "But that's not," I began. "Listen, I understand this is not what you wanted," she hissed. "But she really wants you to be there. So are you going or not?" I followed her as if in a trance. They took my jacket and put a robe on top of the rest of my clothes. They put on a cap and a mask and small shoe covers and pushed me into the maternity room. They basically told me to stay close to Lena and talk to her and encourage her, but at the same time stay the hell out of their way and let the professionals do all the hard work. They talked about dilatation, pressure, and many other medical things that I knew nothing about. They were talking about 24-hour labor and complications, and I was starting to get a headache. Lena squeezed my hand so hard that it seemed like she would crush my bones. The doctor told her to just keep breathing and screaming as she tried to push. "Why should I shout?" she asked. "Damn seems to be a popular word," said the doctor. "But whatever comes into your head is good." They all started working, and I just stood there, terrified, with Lena trying to crush my bones in her mercilessly strong grip. Suddenly, she simply blurted out, "I love you, Danny," and released the girl into the doctor's arms. "Oh, that's so nice," said the nurse, assisting the doctor. "She loves you." I turned to the doctor so the nurse wouldn't see the disgust on my face, watching in amazement as the doctor cut the umbilical cord connecting mother and child. He then gave the child a light spank. Everyone in the room held their breath until the little creature moved a little, then took a tiny breath and screamed. I looked at the writhing, squeaking little mass of humanity and fell in love with it. She was all red and covered with some kind of mucus. I immediately became worried. "She's too small, isn't she?" I asked. 5 pounds 13 ounces is a little low," said one of the nurses. "But she seems very healthy, and that's the main thing. I'm sure she'll be fine." The nurses cleaned her up and handed me the little girl so I could look at her. "You're the first one to look at her," the nurse said. "I meant what I said, Danny," Lena moaned, and I snapped. I headed towards the door. "Danny, where are you going?" Lena screamed. "Don't worry, honey," said the same elderly nurse. "He's overwhelmed with emotion. He doesn't want to fall apart and cry in front of us. Give him a few minutes." I tore the cap off my head and took off my robe too. I walked through the hospital hallway, glaring at everyone I crossed. I finally took off those stupid shoe covers when I got to the car. I started the engine and began to relax to the sound and vibration of the 5.0-liter 400-horsepower V8 playing its sweet synchronized steel symphony. I pressed the gas pedal a little, and the low, menacing growl of the exhaust echoed in my throat. I walked slowly to the edge of the parking lot, barely able to contain myself. I moved very slowly down the street until my eyes narrowed and my mouth narrowed to a line at my chin. Finally, I got to the highway entrance, and we both took off at the same time. The sound of tires bursting, leaving 40 feet of burning rubber, drowned out my scream. "This fucking stupid bitch," I screamed. I pressed my foot into the floor, then eased off the gas, changed gear, and pressed the gas again. The sounds of rage coming from the car reflected my feelings. The car and I became one, rushing past slow cars and trucks on the highway to nowhere at hellish speed. After a quarter tank of gas, I calmly slowed down, turned off the highway, and drove in the opposite direction. I vented and acted out my rage. Now is the time to think about my anger and its reasons and decide what to do. I was angry with Lena for 2 reasons. Firstly, because this bitch was trying to pull off some kind of scam on me. Her tearful declaration of, "I love you, Danny," was too dramatic and cheesy to be anything other than a planned ploy to play on my emotions. This was her attempt to tug at my heartstrings, and it didn't work. The fact that she did it in front of strangers only made her act more ridiculous. I'll never go back to her. In fact, the first day she came back into my life, I told her to never say that to me again. Did she really think I would let her do this? By rights, I should throw this bitch out on the street or just not go back to the hospital. I would never see her again. That would be right. But if I was going to do it, I wouldn't be so angry. I would simply pull my hand out of her death grip and calmly look into her eyes and say, "Lena, I told you not to say that." Then I would leave the hospital and her life forever. I would pay the medical bills so I would never have to deal with her crap again and call it a day. But I couldn't do it. I was trapped. Despite my plan to keep Lena at arm's length, I was trapped. The second reason I was angry was that the baby was born small. She seemed free of birth defects and diseases, but who knows what her brain function will be like. I was really angry that the baby was born small. Low birth weight is a symptom of several dangerous childhood syndromes, and I was worried about this baby. I know I'm not her father. This idiot, of course, was nowhere to be found, but I loved this child even before she was born. I blame Lena again and that absentee jerk, because when I first came into the picture, Lena was already exhausted and sick. She should have known it would affect the baby. The last 6 weeks of feeding her vitamins, fruits, and vegetables could not make up for 7 months of neglect. I wanted to grab Lena by the throat and squeeze her until my last breath. I wanted to find Mr. Not-So-Wonderful and beat him to a pulp too, but I was trapped. I knew I would do whatever it took to stay in this child's life. I'll let her damn mother continue to live in my house. I'll pretend I don't want to kill Mr. Charming just so she can grow up with Uncle Dan in her life. This tiny girl held me captive far more securely than the thickest walls or the strongest bars of any prison. I walked back to the hospital parking lot and pulled out my iPhone as soon as I got out of the car. I called Kim and told her that she had become an aunt. I also left a message for her mom and dad to let them know that they became grandparents. I don't know where the time went. It seemed like only seconds had passed since I left the hospital, filled with such rage that I could barely control myself. But more than an hour passed. I checked at the counter and learned that Lena had left the recovery room and was assigned to the maternity ward. I went to the ward and found that she was not there. She was in the X-ray room getting her ankle checked. She looked up and saw me, and even though she felt sick and nauseous, she smiled. When she saw that I did not return her smile, her face darkened. It somehow bothered me that my moods could influence her so much. The technician told me she would be there for about 20 minutes. I left. I went to the maternity ward to see the baby. I almost didn't get that opportunity. I didn't know the child's name. "What is your name?" asked the woman at the counter. When I told her, she smiled widely and took me into a room with a large glass window where I could look at her. "Are you ready?" she asked. Apparently, the story of my nervous breakdown was spread throughout the hospital. "Don't worry," she said. "This happens often. Men suddenly realize that they have all these new responsibilities and obligations. Suddenly, this little person appears who depends on you for everything. It's stunning. But you're one of the good guys. The bad ones are the ones who leave and just don't come back." After I stared at the baby for a while, I swore she was staring back at me. I waved to her and headed back to Lena's room. When I came into the room, she was sitting on the bed. It seemed that she was waiting for me. I could tell she was nervous. The doctors wanted to x-ray my ankle to see if the cast could be removed," she blurted out. I just stood there. I tried very hard to remain neutral. "Dan, I know you're angry," she said, "and I wasn't honest with you at all. I was just afraid, and I needed to make sure you weren't mad at me, at least until she was born, and hopefully until I took the cast off." I just looked at her. I refused to talk. "Okay, Danny, we need to talk. If you want to kick me out of your house, fine, but I need to be honest with you. It's time for us to talk." Again, my facial expression didn't change. I just glared at her. So she continued talking. "Danny, I'm sorry I said that," she said. "Do you know how much I suffered? All week I've been reading stories about mothers who died in childbirth. I didn't know what to expect. All I knew was that it hurt terribly and the painkillers weren't helping. I thought I might die, so when the doctor told me to just say whatever came to mind, it just came out. So I'm sorry if this hurts you. But because it's true, I don't regret saying it. If you want to kick me out for telling the truth, that's fine. You can stay here as long as you want. I spat. I will survive what you said. Just don't make it a habit. Apparently, that wasn't what she wanted to hear. She lowered her head as if she was ashamed or hurt. Danny, what are you mad about? She asked. I can feel the anger coming off you in waves. You could have killed her, I spat. You and that bastard you slept with. Haven't you thought about what poor nutrition can do to her? She is the smallest girl in the department. Even some premature babies are bigger than her. How can we be sure she will be okay? All we can do is hope and pray. I will hope. Maybe we can ask your parents to pray. If something happens to her, Danny, you can't blame Sebastian for this. He left before I found out I was pregnant. He had already been missing for at least 3 weeks. I tried to contact my parents. They didn't want anything to do with me. They didn't even give me a chance to tell them I was pregnant. Do you know how painful it is when your own parents turn their backs on you? Anyway, the next try went wrong too, Danny. You see, after my parents refused me, I came to you. Nonsense, I shouted. I had never heard of you until the day I saw you on the street. And why would you even come to me? Oh yes, I'm here, she blurted out. It was about 7 weeks after I left. I went to the doctors and then found out that I was pregnant. I went because I felt very bad. Well, I felt worse. I've felt bad since the day I left you. I knew from the day I left our apartment that I was making the biggest mistake of my life. But once I told you, I couldn't go back. I knew you wouldn't even talk to me. So anyway, after talking to my parents, I decided to just go with my feelings and let you know how stupid I was and hope that you have at least an ounce of love left for me. She took a deep breath. I was surprised that my key still worked. I opened the door and entered the apartment. I called you, but no one answered. I thought maybe you were out for a run or maybe you weren't at home. But after a few moments, I started hearing sounds and realized that you were actually at home, but busy. At first, I only recognized your voice and realized that you were enjoying yourself. You didn't sit and wait for me to return, that's for sure. But I realized that you have the right to try to find someone else. After all, I tried too. But Danny, what I did, as strange as it may sound, was not my fault. I was out of my mind when I left you. Then I recognized the second voice. I couldn't believe she could do this to me. I walked up to the bedroom, and the door wasn't even closed all the way. You had sex with my sister Danny, she said. You were in our bed with her. No wonder she hates me now. She knows how confusing it all is. She also knows how I still feel about you. That's why she's so damn scared to be around me. I know I ruined our marriage, Danny. I know this much better than you. I also know that I will do everything to fix this. Kim knows this too, which is why she just doesn't want to be around me. Our loud voices and screams attracted people into the room. We looked away from each other and realized that there were several nurses standing in the room, looking at us. We're fine, Lena said. Danny and I just needed to vent. 3 days later, we left the hospital and brought Ella home. During this time, we did not discuss our fight or any other things that we needed to discuss. It will be another 2 weeks before the cast is removed from Lena's ankle. She was healing well, but the doctors told her not to put any weight on it. This meant that I spent a lot of time moving Ella back and forth from her crib to Lena. I also started feeding her, and soon I began to change her clothes. This led to me carrying her in my arms and rocking her to sleep at night. These 2 weeks flew by quickly, and finally the day came when the cast was to be removed from Lena's ankle. I held Ella while they cut the cast from Lena's ankle. Ella and I watched as they peeled the hard white shell off her leg, and Lena began scratching it as if it were full of ants. They put on a large walking bandage and told her to be very careful for the next 2 weeks, but that it wouldn't hurt her to walk. They gave her a pair of crutches and sent her home. All the nurses who knew us came to see Ella. They lisped with her and smiled. On the way home, Lena looked at Ella while I drove the car. Strangely, I was so excited to take this little joy home that the thought of the baby seat warping the Mustang's leather back seat didn't cross my mind. I can't believe the cast is finally off my ankle, she said. Don't get stupid, I warned. I've already been told that I have to make sure you do your exercises. You need to strengthen the joint and increase its flexibility. Yes, yes, she smiled. You know what I want to do first. I really thought it wasn't about me. In fact, I regretted saying it as soon as the words left my mouth. Find some strange guy and have sex with him, I spat. The look of pain and horror on her face told me everything I needed to know. I hurt her, and badly. I don't know if that was my intention, or, as she claimed in the hospital, it just came out. When we got home, I tried to carry her into the house as usual, but she told me to let her get used to the crutches and try to walk. Once we got into the house and I put Ella to bed, I headed back to the living room to apologize. Even though I meant it when I said it, it was not a kind deed. If I wanted to keep Ella with me as long as possible, I needed to keep the peace between me and Lena. I returned to the living room and saw her crying. I slowly walked up to her and hugged her. She returned the hug and started crying even harder. "I'm so sorry, Lena," I said. It was a childish and thoughtless statement. "It's not just that," she said. She held up a piece of paper for me to look at. "Yours are on the table. Our divorce papers have arrived. Now I'm really not your wife anymore," she said sadly. I just hugged her and held her while she cried. "That's good," I said. "Now you are not trapped with me. You might actually find someone you want to be with." She pushed away from me angrily. "Don't you understand that I want to be with you, stupid? Danny, you can be such an idiot sometimes. I already told you that from the day I left home, I regretted it. I left a man who loved me for a man who was just using me." She looked at me. "I know you don't want to hear this. I know you don't care about any of this, but Sebastian never loved me. And I never loved him. He was a fraud. He fed me all this crap about pooling our resources. He gave me access to his bank accounts, and I gave him access to mine. He urged me not to go to work at least once or twice a week. He said that I could do some of the work from home, and I did it. I hated having sex with him, and after the first few times I always made excuses. He didn't insist, so apparently it wasn't very pleasant for him either. He always said that love is more important than sex, and that he loves me. I didn't know that Sebastian had overheard women at work talking about me. He misunderstood. It was just a joke. Everyone who knew us always talked about how much you loved me, Danny. They always said that to you, I'm worth $1 million. Over time it dwindled, and they just said, she's worth $1 million. Sebastian heard this several times and did not understand the context. He thought I had $1 million and decided to steal me from you. Once he got access to my bank accounts, he discovered that I didn't have nearly as much money. It didn't bother him. He just stole everything I had and forged my co-signature on the car loan and some other things and left me with debts. He also stole computer passwords and stole money from some of my work accounts. Therefore, I will never be able to work in banking again. In any case, he didn't even leave a note. He just disappeared. I never meant to hurt you, Danny. So when I left you everything we had. I thought that since Sebastian is rich, I don't need anything. It turned out that we were living in a luxury apartment illegally. He knew the building manager and stole the keys. When they found out I was in the apartment, they arrested me, and now I have a criminal record. I couldn't find the words. "Do you know what the worst part of all of this was, Danny?" she asked. "The worst part wasn't that he took all my money and ruined my career. I don't care about money or work. The worst part was that I was stupid enough to let him separate us. There's something else you really should know about all of this, but I'll leave that for later. There are 2 more things I want to tell you right now." She looked me in the eyes and simply said it. "The first thing I want you to know is that you shouldn't be mad about what you said, because right now I really want to go and have sex with someone else's boyfriend, but you won't let me." "Lena, I don't care who you sleep with," I spat. "Just don't do it in my house." "Danny, you care," she chuckled, "because the strange guy I want is you. The only thing that makes you a stranger is that you were next to me for 6 damn weeks and didn't realize it. The second thing I want to tell you is what I actually talked about in the car. The thing I really want to do is get in the damn pool. She smiled. You will have to look after the child. I've been waiting for this moment since I first saw him. Lena, this won't happen, I said. So wait a minute, are you telling me I can't use your pool, or are you telling me you won't watch the baby while I do this? She answered sharply. Let me guess, now that I can move around a little, you've decided that I can take care of my baby on my own. Lena, if we're going to do this, we really have to learn to talk to each other and listen to each other. Kim once told me that she thought I needed counseling to help me deal with you. Perhaps we both need counseling to try to get over all the terrible things that have happened to us. If we decide to do this, I will pay for it, I said. Then why can't I get into the pool? She asked calmly. First of all, because I'm worried that you'll put stress on your ankle on the first day, I said. Her face softened a little. And secondly, because there is no water in it. I drained it. I had nightmares about Ella falling into it. Lena just started laughing. Danny, how can she get in there if she can't even crawl yet? She can't even roll over or sit up on her own. Will you keep an eye on her while I use your hot tub? I nodded as she used crutches to hobble away from me, muttering and laughing under her breath. The next year flew by quickly. Ella grew by leaps and bounds. She was tiny, but healthy and smarter than most children her age. In the first couple of months, Lena and I hardly quarreled. We had too much to do. Mrs. Hayes retired and Lena took charge of the house and looked after Ella while I worked. She went to her consultant and I went to mine. We didn't discuss this much. We had incidents and we dealt with them. After Lena began cleaning the house, she suddenly came up to me and handed me a box. I didn't realize how much sex you needed, she blurted. Lena, what are you talking about? I asked. Danny, you probably don't know this, but I have a collection. My collection is starting to get to me. Now, I'm tired of collecting them. Give these back to my sister. I opened the box, and there were at least 7 or 8 pairs of panties. Why are you giving this to Kim? I asked. Because it's hers, she replied sharply. I found them in almost every room of the house. What was she doing, marking her territory? I can imagine her going around the house like dogs, marking every tree in the area. Should I also leave my panties in the places where I found her, or should we just have sex in these rooms so that I have the right to do so? Mrs. Hayes must have been a terrible cleaner if she didn't find them, or maybe you were sneaking Kim here. I told you I don't mind if she comes. After all, this is your home, but damn. No matter how hard she tried, Lena burst into tears and began to cry. I hugged her and let her cry. Lena, since you moved here, I haven't brought anyone here, I said. I think like you said, Mrs. Hayes, she probably didn't know how to tell me, so she just left them where she found them. I feel like you already knew this, so why are you making such a big deal out of it? Because I hate it, she screamed. She screamed so loudly that she woke Ella. At the first sound of Ella's voice, I instantly left. I came back holding Ella and rocking her. She was smiling again and holding her favorite toy. I took the bottle and held it while Lena followed us. We're not done, Lena said. Danny, there are things we really need to discuss, and hiding behind Ella isn't helping, she said. At this moment, Ella was very pleased. Both people in her life were close. She had her favorite chewed-up soft toy and a bottle of juice. At that moment, she chose to say her first word. Yes, yes, she blurted out. I saw Lena smile even as I felt a dagger stabbing into my heart. I very gently handed Ella over to Lena and turned to leave. Danny, where are you going? Lena asked. Maybe I should hire a private investigator, I said. I will hire someone to find her dad, and then all our problems will be solved. You 3 can be a great little family, and Kim can leave her panties all over the house. Lena quickly approached me with fire in her eyes. Danny, she's a baby. She doesn't know what she's doing. All she knows is that you are the one she wants. You make her feel loved and cared for, and despite all this crap, even this baby knows you love her. It didn't change anything for her mother, did it? I spat. She froze and just stood there. Her mother knew that I loved her and took care of her too, but she still left for another man. Why should it be any different with Ella? After a tense moment, she started again. Danny, I deserved it, but she didn't. What does it matter what she calls you? You were with her every minute of her life. You're the only dad she knows. Don't deprive her of that because of something stupid I did. I'm already paying for it. Don't make Ella pay too. Lena, you left me and abandoned our marriage without any warning. You didn't even tell me what I did wrong, I spat. You told me that you met someone and you want to be with him. This is all. Forget about everything we've been through together. Forget about how I treated you, that's all. I will meet you in 6 months and pull you out from under the car. I take you to the hospital and care for you and your baby, restoring your health and giving you a place to live. How exactly were you punished? I asked. No one was punished except me, Lena. Not you, not the magical asshole, just me. She couldn't find an answer to that, so I left. Over the next few months, whenever I became irritable or nervous, Lena would come to me. What's wrong, Danny? She asked. You and Kim can't meet. There's a simple answer to that, you know. Please don't start, Lena, I said. Danny, why don't you just have sex with me? She asked. I'm a grown woman. I have needs too. And at least with me, you won't have to worry about who else I'm sleeping with. At least with Kim, I don't have to worry about being overwhelmed again, I replied. I made one mistake, Danny, she said. One mistake, and I'll never get a second chance. Kim has probably had 20 other boyfriends since you two started dating. I slept with the same guy twice, and I was excluded from your heart forever. And Danny, despite what everyone thinks, I'm not a woman of easy virtue. I came to you and told you about Sebastian before I slept with him. So I never cheated on you. I loved you too much for that. Yes, you love me so much that you just left me. You didn't even give me a chance to fight for you. She just said she found another guy and left, I said. One good thing that happened was that I actually took Ella to visit her grandparents, and, just as I thought, they melted. When I walked into their house with Ella in my arms, Lena's mother took one look at her and just started crying. I put Ella on the floor and let her crawl to her grandmother, and that was enough. Ella, can you say grandma? I asked her. Ba-ba, she said, smiling and showing her rare teeth. Around Christmas, the whole family gathered at my house for a very busy family dinner. The exchange of gifts was extremely strange. Lena's parents bought Ella many gifts. Me too. Even her Aunt Kim bought her a huge teddy bear, which first scared her and then became her best friend. Kim also tried to lighten the mood a little by giving Lena a bottle of her favorite perfume. But that's where it all ended. Lena and Kim barely spoke, and Lena's parents were still very angry with her, but it was a start. After they left, I gave Lena my own gift. As she started clearing the table, she smiled at me and told me that her mom hugged her before she left and her dad told her goodbye. This is progress, she said. In a couple of years, we might be friends again. Do you want to open your gifts? I asked. I have no gifts, she said. But as long as my baby is okay, I'm happy. You have a few from me, I said. She looked under the tree and began to unpack the gifts. I bought her an iPhone, a couple of outfits, and a gold necklace. Thank you, Danny, she beamed. There are 2 more, I said, handing her the box and envelope. She opened the envelope and pulled out a check. Danny, why are you giving me money? It's $10,000. Lena, everyone needs money for an emergency or to start a new life, I told her. She opened the box and found a small house inside. She looked at me strangely. It seemed like she couldn't understand what was happening. Danny, I don't understand, she said. Lena, a few months ago, you asked me how long you would be punished, I said. I thought about it. I'm going to help you find a house and pay rent for a year. During this time, you can start well to build a new life. Danny, you're the biggest fool in the world, she said. She dropped the house and ran out of the room, crying. I sat and watched as Ella played with her new bear. It was really fun to watch her. She seemed to play more with the wrappers and boxes than with some of the toys. She took one of the empty boxes and placed it on the bear's lap and jumped back as if she expected the bear to move. After I had been watching and playing with Ella for a while, I noticed that Lena had returned to the room and was watching me watch Ella. "Danny, I've decided to accept your gifts," she said. I smiled at her and said, "You will indeed accept gifts from a fool." "Yes," she smiled. "I have already chosen a house that I would like to rent. Here is the address." She handed me a strip of paper. I looked at her. "Lena, this is the house we are in," I said. "I'll rent it for a year if you live in it with me and Ella," she said. And I tore up the check because I don't have a bank account, so keep it in your account until I leave. "Now," she said, "I have a gift for you too. This is something you used to really like." "Is this turtle wax?" I asked. Because I only use turtle wax products on my car. I tried Meguiar's products, but was not satisfied. Some Armor All products are also quite good. I really like their tire gel. Even I have to admit it's better than Turtle Wax Ice Ultra Shine. That's all good, Danny," she said. "But I had something else in mind. Something we'll have to wait until Ella falls asleep for." I felt awkward at that moment, and it showed. I don't know why I didn't just tell her about it, but I didn't. Women are good at feeling things like that, and suddenly she was angry. "So you can have sex with my sister all over the house, and I'm not your match, right?" she said. "What's the matter? Are you choosing her just because she has bigger breasts? Or because she allows you to do any nasty things to her? I thought sex was the way people express their love for each other. At least that's what you told me when we were married. I didn't know it was just about fighting each other like a couple of monkeys." "Well, since you started it," I said, "maybe it's because Kim and I don't love each other the way you and I were supposed to love each other. Kim and I only date to meet our physical needs. You and I were magic, Lena. I got turned on just by being around you, because I loved you so much that it hurt to be apart. I really felt like we were a part of each other. And then, suddenly, Danny, I met someone else and I want to be with him." Can you imagine how painful this is? Do you understand how wrong this is and how this makes me feel? So forgive me if the thought of sleeping with you doesn't make me want to, but I have my reasons. Danny, my therapist, who you pay all this money to, has several opinions about why I did what I did, and some of them are physical. She also says that we need to try to get back to normal relationships. She told me that the first few times will be terrible and you probably won't make it, but that we should keep trying. She said if we want this to work. And then she made a mistake, I interrupted. "Who said we want this to work? Who said anything about returning to normal relationships? When did this become one of our goals? What are our goals anyway? Do we have the same goals? Danny, what do you think we're doing?" she shouted. "Of course we want this to work. We should be together. We will raise our family and do everything we always planned. Our goal is to return to the way things were before. I admit that I destroyed us. I was wrong, Danny. I was out of my mind and didn't realize it until it was too late to come back. Even when I realized this, I thought that I should make the best of the situation, but after sleeping with him even once, I realized that I was at a dead end. I knew it would never work, and it didn't. In a way, his departure was a blessing, but that's all in the past. The new year is coming, Danny. We must leave the past behind." "Okay," I said. "Now I know what your goals are. My others? I just want to make the best of a really lousy situation. Just like with your psychiatrist, I don't want to go into how I see the situation, but I see things differently than you do. I just want to feel normal again. I really wish I could get you out of my head and out of my heart. Ever since we broke up, or since you left me, I've had all sorts of problems. I doubted myself for a while, but thanks to many friends, including Kimmy, I regained my confidence and began to move on. One of the biggest things I couldn't get rid of, Lena, is the us. I still hold you in my mind and heart as something special. Even if it's not true, my mind and heart think it is. I still have warm and fuzzy memories of how things were between us, and I can't get rid of them. I guess to really get rid of them, I'd have to take them apart and show them how wrong they were. But at the moment, I think that would do more harm than good. I'm going step by step. It's like when you fall off a horse. There are only two ways to overcome this. One way is to avoid horses for the rest of your life. Hell, I know people who don't watch the Kentucky Derby or cowboy movies because they're too afraid of horses. Another way is to get back on the horse and stay on it until the fear goes away. That's what I'm doing. Instead of walking around afraid of ever running into you, I force myself to see you and be around you and talk to you until you become just another person to me. I still think sex with you was somehow magical and meant so much more to me than with other people. I think in my mind I made it too big. Except for the last time, when it seemed like you weren't into it. My mind seems to think that sex with you was some kind of miracle. She snorted. Lena, on a purely physical level, I don't think that was the case, but I'm based only on the facts. Emotions are what confuse me, I said. Our minds and emotions really do fail us sometimes. Isn't it? She said. You don't even realize how stupid you sound. You embellished your words. You gave me a lot of analogies and nonsense, but what you really meant came across clearly. You said you still love me, but you don't want this, and you're afraid that I'll hurt you again. You're trying to get over it, but you think that if we have sex, it will either be special and magical, which means you're really screwed, because then you will be stuck. You will have to put up with a woman of easy virtue and keep her close. Or there's a chance that if we have sex, and it's not very good, it will mean that you wasted your life on a woman of easy virtue who wasn't worth your attention. It's more complicated, I said. Really? She asked. Maybe you just want it to be like this. Maybe you're just afraid to find out. Maybe you're so afraid that you've decided to spend the rest of your life with women you don't care about because you're afraid of what will happen when you get back to where you're supposed to be. Maybe I'm just afraid of the long-term consequences of undetected diseases, I spat. Besides, you once said that your sister marks her territory by leaving panties all over the house. This made you very angry. This is the same thing that dogs do. When they smell another dog in their trees, what do dogs do? They mark the same trees and leave their scent, don't they? Well, I'm not territorial like a dog. I am human. I think that if something belongs to me, it is mine because it belongs to me. I don't have to go around and mark other dogs' trees. When I see that something belongs to someone else, I just find mine. Mr. Charming or Sebastian or whatever his name is, tagged my tree. He marked you as his when he had sex with you. If you ever let me meet him or find out who he is, I'd probably want to deal with him. But I never got that chance. His way was a cowardly way of, staying in the shadows. I don't do that. You are his. I will find mine. Daniel, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, she said. I have never belonged to anyone other than you in my life. You're going through all this stupid pain for nothing. Someday you'll realize I made a damn mistake and we'll have to deal with it. Someday we will regret the time we wasted because of this. At the same time, I said, someday you will realize that the mistake you made was deciding to leave and have sex with another guy and... Danny, I told you it was a mistake at least 100 times, she cried. Yes, I said quietly, but someday you will understand that some mistakes we simply cannot overcome, never. She looked like she wanted to say something, but she simply turned and headed to her room. She quietly closed the door. That evening when I went to bed, I could still hear her crying. I wanted to say something to make her feel better, but I couldn't say anything. In some ways, she was right. I was afraid of her. She was the only woman I ever truly loved, and she was right about the sex I had with Kim being purely therapeutic. For some time, we found ourselves in a vicious circle. Lena began walking around the house wearing less and less clothes. I could tell she was trying to tease me, and it worked. It just didn't work out the way she wanted either. Lena would turn me on, and I would go out and have sex with her sister. Kimmy, like most younger sisters, had to answer to her older siblings, so from time to time she called and asked Lena to continue doing what she was doing. Lena cried, and then called me names and said that I was a coward. I only slept with Kim because I was afraid of the real thing. Then, confident that I wanted her, she began to wear even less clothes. I don't know how it would have ended if nature had not intervened. It was a warm spring evening when everything went to hell. Lena decided that the three of us, she, Ella, and I should have a nice family dinner on the deck. Then we should all play in the pool together. I recently started to get over my fear of Ella being near the pool, but only if I was with her. It was a wonderful evening. Lena has been hugging me a lot more often lately, and that evening she was with me everywhere. I've always loved Lena's body, so when she came back in that white swimsuit, I have to admit that my mouth dropped open. Lena looked at me and smiled. It's good to see that even if you don't want me, my body still turns you on. But you always liked my ass, didn't you, Dan? She whispered. Things got worse when she went into the pool and then came out with water pouring off of her. Then I noticed that in the fading light of the sun, the water made the swimsuit transparent. It looked like she wasn't wearing a swimsuit at all. I see you like something, Dan, she asked. The waves of heat emanating from her were not due to the temperature. Can you watch Ella for a few minutes? I asked. I need to do something. Why play by yourself when we can play together? She said. Ella is already starting to fall asleep, and in a few minutes we will be alone. We could, relax here on the deck together. This could be the start of something new for us. We have never done this outside, but if you prefer to play by yourself. I'm just going to make a call, I replied sharply. Tell my sister hi, she said, laughing. Tell her she can come see her niece. I called Kim. Her voice immediately perked up as soon as she found out it was me. Hello, son-in-law, she said. Do you want to book my services for the weekend? I was thinking about something more urgent, I said. Sorry, darling, these are the same days. But if you are interested in just hugging me and making me feel good. Under normal circumstances, I would love to, I lied. But your sister walks around here in this white swimsuit. All I heard was laughter on the phone. But she really can't fill out a swimsuit, especially the top, Kim said. Yeah, but he seems to like what I have, Lena said. Lena, put the phone away, I said sharply. I heard a click and then more laughter from the other room. After I hung up, Lena entered the living room. Are you sure you don't want to hug her and make her feel good? She laughed. Shut up, Lena, I shouted. I was just worried about your well-being, dear, she chuckled. My door is always open, and I'm always ready to help you with any problems you may have, especially if I cause them. I avoided Lena for the rest of the evening. Her knowing glances and sarcastic comments only made me more irritable. I ran into her once around 10 p.m. when I went to the kitchen to get a drink. Now you know how I feel when you go to bed with my sister, she said. I ignored her. For me, it's 10 times worse, she said. I have to watch the person I love leave to do something with someone else that I would do for him in a heartbeat. It's still not as bad as when the person you love tells you he's leaving because he wants to be with someone else, I replied. I come home to you and Ella every time, and you always know that I will come back. It's not the same as being told that the person you love most in the world loves someone else, and that you don't matter. She left the room. Later that evening, as I was tossing and turning in bed, I heard my door open. Lena did this sometimes. She would open the door and say something like, on your way home, stop by for some milk. Ella drinks about a liter of milk a day, and we're running low. Or other times it might be, Dan, I know it pisses you off when I say this, but I love you. This really drove me crazy. So when the door creaked open, I expected her to say this or something else. Then the door just closed, and she didn't say anything. The room was silent for a few moments, then the sheet lifted and someone slid into bed with me. This is Blah Lena. We made love. Okay, Danny, I know I said we didn't need to discuss this, but I just need to know. What do you need to know, Lena? I asked. Did you like it? Was it even close to how it was with my sister? Was it as good as you remember it before? She asked. Suddenly, I was angrier than I had ever been in my life. Get out of my room, Lena, I spat. I got up and headed to the bathroom. What did I say? She asked. Tears streamed down her face. She followed me, naked, into the bathroom, and I had to admit that just the sight of that toned, naked body turned me on again. "Danny, don't do this," she cried. "What was wrong? Don't push me away. Tell me what I did wrong so I don't do it again." "I wasn't confused by your first question," I said scornfully. "I was going to answer that one. I was going to answer the second one, too. But the third one, you should probably leave." "All I asked was if it was as good as it used to be," she said. "What was so bad about it? I was worried about it. You know a woman's body changes after pregnancy, and I wanted to be really good for you. I wasn't trying to challenge your magical memories, because I have them too, darling. But tonight was—" "Lena, the word that ruined everything was earlier. That one word put everything into context for me," I said sharply. "What you meant was before you started sleeping with that bastard. Before you let that bastard get you pregnant. Before you decided I wasn't right for you. Before. Why did you decide that everything we had meant nothing? Thank you for reminding me why I decided that we couldn't be together anymore." She just stood there, naked, looking at me, with tears running down her face. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," she said angrily. "You got it all wrong. I keep telling you it was a mistake." "No, Lena," I said sharply. "Tonight, it was a mistake. Just keep your promise and never talk about it again." "To hell with you, Danny," she screamed. "There was no mistake tonight. It was the best night of my life. It was perfect, and you know it. I'll keep my promise, but you'll be thinking about this night for a long time. We both know you won't be happy again to have sex with my sister. You won't be happy with anyone else but me for the same reason I'm not happy with anyone else but you. We love each other, bastard. Come to my room. But don't worry. I won't try to hurt you. All you have to do is come and take me. Anytime you want me, I'm yours, but you'll have to come and take it." With these words, she left my room naked and walked down the corridor. She's never looked sexier. I don't know if it was the way her ass swayed as she walked, but if I hadn't been so angry at my inability to resist her, I would have followed her then and there. The next morning, everything was as usual. Lena got up and prepared breakfast for me, and as promised, she didn't mention last night. As we were eating, her robe fell open, and I saw that she was wearing a white swimsuit. She smiled at me, letting me know that she was aware of everything that was happening. "I thought that since it's going to be even hotter today, Ella and I would spend some time in the pool while we wait for you to come home," she said. "You liked that swimsuit yesterday, so I decided to wear it again for you." I almost choked on my toast and looked at her. "I need to be careful," she continued. "No other man will ever see me in this swimsuit. You probably haven't noticed, but when it gets wet, you can see everything." "Make sure you hold Ella tightly while she's in the pool," I said, trying to change the subject. "Danny, she's my daughter," Lena said. "Just remember the last thing I told you last night." I did remember this, and that was the problem. She was right. It lasted almost a week before I called Kim. We met at a motel downtown when we were both due to have lunch. We both had jobs where we didn't have to report to anyone, so the occasional late lunch wasn't going to cause us any problems. I tried to pretend everything was normal because I didn't want to hurt Kim's feelings, but I knew I was screwed. Sooner or later, I will go into Lena's room. Lena didn't make it any easier. She constantly told me how much she loved me and left little hints. She was bending down to pick up one of Ella's toys and looked over to see me looking at her ass. "Any time," she said. I lasted almost 3 weeks. It was even harder because I hadn't slept with Kim since then. I still remember walking back and forth in front of her room for at least 10 minutes. Finally, when I thought I could hold out a little longer, the door opened and she looked at me. "Danny, are you going to come in or not?" she asked. Her tone was not accusatory or accusatory. He was pleading and desperate. I realized that she wanted me there as much as I wanted to be there. Before I could say anything, she upped the ante. "I promise we won't have to talk about it this time," she said. I gave up and went into her room. I'm lost, I thought. I'm completely lost. Again, she seemed to need more contact after we were done. She wrapped her arms around me and said, Don't talk, Danny. Sleep. The next morning, she was beaming from ear to ear. She even kissed me goodbye before I left for work, and I let her. And so everything went on for about 3 months. On the surface, we were a happy couple with an adorable, almost 3-year-old daughter. Inside, we were not married and did not share the same room. We only slept in the same bed on the nights we had sex, which was about once every 2 weeks. She, of course, wanted more, much more, and told me about it. But I resisted it with all my might. I was still holding on to the old adage that once a cheater, always a cheater, even if technically Lena wasn't cheating on me. She just came and told me that she wanted to be with someone else. Maybe it was pride, more than anything else, that kept me from admitting that I just wanted us to get through this. She slept with Sebastian several times, she said, and I slept with several women several times and slept with her sister many times. Were we equal? I actually slept with Kim even after we got back together, and Lena had to just deal with it. In fact, Lena didn't know that when she and I got back together, I stopped sleeping with Kim. She discovered this when Kim showed up a few months later with a guy she wanted to introduce to us. She claimed that this guy could be the one. Lena slapped Kim, and I was forced to separate them. "You must have a very good reason to hit me, sister," Kim spat. "Because I'm seriously considering kicking your ass." Lena was even angrier. "How dare you hurt Danny by bringing some other guy right in his face," Lena snapped. Kim burst out laughing. "She's really stupid, isn't she?" she laughed. "How stupid am I?" Lena asked. "Lena, Danny and I aren't sleeping together anymore," Kim said. "We stopped as soon as you two started again." "What?" Lena smiled. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" Lena was so happy that we thought she was going to place an ad in the newspaper. In her mind, we were more or less fixed. I still wasn't so sure. She started coming to my room to sleep even when we weren't having sex. And we started having sex almost regularly. I have to admit that I was torn, but the opportunity to deal with this situation came in the strangest of circumstances. At that time, I quickly discovered that one of the responsibilities of my new job was to represent the company and even give presentations. There was a big conference coming up, and my boss told me that I would be making a presentation on our company's new product lines with a brief discussion of our new manufacturing process. I was a little scared at first, but realized that this could be another opportunity for advancement. He emailed me a copy of the conference brochure, and I saw that there would be some important people there, not only from our industry, but from many different types of businesses. Again, I realized that this could be a great opportunity for me. I could develop connections that could be beneficial in the future. As I looked through the brochure, my heart suddenly went cold. On one of the pages, there was information about one of the speakers. She was a venture capitalist from New York. Her family owned parts of several large banks. Her name was Maggie Stevenson, and for an older woman, she was incredibly beautiful. But it wasn't her beauty that attracted me. This was the last line in the paragraph. The one who said she would be represented by her fiancé, Sebastian Shaw, former resident of our area who moved to New York. The show returns to our area for a conference. I think they meant it as some sort of local boy success story, but to me it was like waving a red flag in front of an already raging bull. Could it really be him? But damn, how many men are there with the name Sebastian? My brain started working at full capacity. I made diagrams and plans while I wrote my speech. I immediately abandoned some of the plans. The plan to cut it into thousands of inch cubes and feed them to the sharks was immediately abandoned. This and the plan where I chain him to a rocket and send him into space were just not practical. Making him dig his own grave and then beating him with the same shovel seemed satisfying, but also provided too many opportunities for arrest. In the end, I decided that Sebastian wasn't the one I should be mad at. After all, he did not take an oath to love and respect me. Lena did this. She was the one who broke our vows, not some bastard I've never met. In fact, the only thing Sebastian had that I needed was the right to make decisions in Ella's life. Sebastian was who I wanted to be. Sebastian, although he had never seen Ella, could appear out of nowhere and start demanding to see her. Fathers, even debtor fathers, are given certain rights that I, although I was with her every second of her life, did not have. Lena could get angry at me and leave, taking Ella with her, and I would have no rights. One of my plans was to meet Sebastian at a meeting and get him to sign a document relinquishing parental rights to Ella. I planned to attack him from several fronts. First, I would explain to him that I have been paying all of his daughter's expenses since her birth and before, and that I am considering suing him for the unpaid money. Plus, he will be required to pay a portion of her expenses until her 18th birthday. But I would tell him that, on the other hand, if he just signed a waiver of parental rights for a child he never met to me, I would pay him all the money I could raise, which would probably be about $51,000. It would be his choice. Since he was getting married to a fairly wealthy woman, I was sure he wouldn't want the details of why he left town to surface. So maybe I could get him to sign a waiver without having to give him all my money if I would just continue paying Ella's expenses. This little girl was everything to me. The only thing I had to do after that was convince Lena to let me adopt her. Then no one can ever take her away from me, even if Lena and I don't. If they could get along and she would go to some other guy, I would have visitation rights. And speaking of Lena, it would be good for her too. The second part of my plan involved taking Lena with me to the conference and letting her know that Sebastian would be there. I called my lawyer and asked him to prepare the documents I would need to both threaten legal action against Sebastian and sign away his parental rights. The second part was much easier. When I came home in the evening, I told Lena about the conference. She was very excited for me when I told her what this could mean. I pretended to leave the brochure on the table as I started to fire up the grill. This was the first time we had ever discussed anything related to my work, so she was thrilled to be included in it. I think she thought I was trying to involve her more in my life, and she liked it. She looked at the brochure while I played with Ella and worked on the steaks. I watched her face out of the corner of my eye as she read. When she reached the middle of the page, her eyes suddenly became huge. She looked at me and noticed that I was busy with Ella. "Danny, did you read the whole brochure?" she asked. "No, I just got it today," I said. "I just brought it home for you." She suddenly felt nervous. "Why did you bring it home for me, Danny? I didn't know anything about it. How would I know?" "Lena, what are you talking about?" I asked. "I brought the brochure home because I wanted to ask you to come with me to it. I've never given a speech in front of a large audience before, and I wanted someone to be there with me. Besides, in a way, since you're not going to leave, it concerns both of us." "Damn it," she said. "I will never leave you again, but I will gladly be your companion." She looked like she was about to cry, and then she threw herself into my arms. "What happened, Lena?" I asked. "This is the first time you've invited me somewhere with you since we got back together," she muttered, burying her face in my chest and starting to cry. "Lena, you'll have to find a dress that will blow them away," I said. This brought her to her senses. She started smiling at me. "We need something to show off my butt," she said. I just looked at her. "Hey, I have to look good. I'll be there for you. Don't worry, Danny, they can look, but no one can touch, except you, of course." I handed her my credit card and returned to Ella. 10 days before the conference, I decided to follow it. The next day, I noticed that something had changed in her face. She seemed, I don't know, more radiant. She smiled more, and she seemed to want sex more. I realized what was about to happen and knew I needed to be prepared. The big question was how she would try to do it. Will Lena just try to meet Sebastian and tell him about Ella and then go to him? Or will she limit herself to a few days of sex with him, hoping that I won't find out? I thought she would probably choose the latter. She was, as she said, honest for the first time, and it almost destroyed her. So she'll probably try to get him back secretly. She hoped that he would want her with Ella, but if not, they would have spent a couple of days together and agreed to meet from time to time, and I would have known nothing. The difference was that I was no longer stupid and blind in love. Damn it, there's no need to get angry or act stupid about it. It really wasn't an insurmountable situation. We could actually find a solution that would make us all happy. What if Lena goes to New York with Sebastian as his mistress? Sebastian could sleep with her as much as he wanted and still marry Miss Money. Lena could leave Ella with me since Sebastian was not the father. Everyone could get what they want. No one would have been hurt. I smiled thinking about it. Of course, I would be a little sad losing Lena. Sex with her was truly special, and Lena would probably miss Ella too. But we would all make sacrifices for the greater good. Life is full of compromises and sacrifices. Damn, look at all the sacrifices I made for my Mustang. I had to sacrifice good fuel economy and pay higher insurance premiums, but it was worth it every time I stepped on the gas pedal. Besides, just looking at this car made me smile. By the end of the week, I was sure that Lena was behaving differently. She had all sorts of mood swings and seemed manic at times. When I thought about it, I realized that this is exactly how she acted the last time she left me. Only this time I was ready. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, it won't work. By the time the conference was just 3 days away, I started noticing calls on my caller ID that I didn't recognize. These were local calls, judging by the code, so I assumed that she was in contact with Sebastian, and he was already in town. She started trying to kiss me often, and most of the time she did it when we weren't even having sex. I didn't let her kiss me because I knew what she was doing. She did the same thing people do before they put their pets to sleep. In the last few days before the doctor put the dog down, the owner gave the dog extra treats and played with it almost twice as much. It was a reaction to feelings of guilt. I knew her next attempt would be the same pathetic comfort sex she gave me the night before she left last time. I wasn't going to fall for it again. I decided that instead of our amazing and emotional lovemaking, I would do with her what I did with Kim. The difference was that Kim liked it. The next evening, as I expected, Lena invited us to grill and have dinner by the pool. Pool, Ella repeated. Under her robe, Lena wore that same white swimsuit that drove me crazy. The robe opened, and she smiled at me. See something you like? I was stunned, but I kept it to myself. Today, I will do something special for you, she said. I'm actually a little nervous about tomorrow, I said. All my plans disappeared. I just wanted it all to end. When she came to bed and stood in the doorway with the light behind her, she was the sexiest thing I've ever seen. I think it broke my heart again that she could be such a conniving bitch. In fact, if she was so smart, she was quite stupid. She received 3 more calls from that local number that day. If she was as smart as she thought, she could at least delete the call history. Not today, Lena, I said. Jesus, you're really nervous, aren't you? She said. Well, tomorrow it will be. Can we wait until tomorrow to talk about this? I asked. I just want to sleep. She just rolled over and hugged me, starting to fall asleep. Lena, I'd like to sleep alone tonight, if you don't mind, I told her. Why? She asked. Then she simply stood up and left the room. The next day, we were both nervous. Luckily, Kim came to look after Ella. I went for a run and then came back and washed the car. Lena supposedly went to get her hair done, but I didn't know where she actually was. I heard a few sentences of conversation between the sisters before getting dressed. Isn't that famous white swimsuit that drives Danny crazy? Kim asked. Yes, Lena answered. Why is he on the floor? Kim asked. Because I don't need him anymore, Lena answered. And sister, I may need your help with Danny, depending on what happens today. He probably won't like it, but I have no choice. What are you talking about, Lena? Kim asked. You know you guys are just starting to get close again. Don't ruin it. The conference was supposed to start at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, so we left a little earlier. We drove downtown to the convention center, and I found myself stopping and smiling as I drove past where I grabbed Lena and prevented her from being hit by a car. I ran my hand over my jacket, where I had the documents folded in my pocket, to make sure they were in place. Lena took my hand and smiled. Danny, we need to talk, she said. I looked at her angrily. Why are you starting this nonsense now? I snapped. The rest of the time we were in the car, she seemed to alternate between moments of extreme joy and nervousness. I thought that on the one hand, she was happy to see Sebastian again, but on the other hand, she was nervous that I might catch her and get angry. As we walked around the convention center, her head was spinning in all directions, constantly pointing at things like flowers or decorations, but I knew who she was really looking for. Our seats were very close to the stage. We sat in the third row from the very front. With thousands of people at the conference, these were great venues. At first, we sat in our seats, although I soon had to go on stage to give a speech. There was a small room next to the stage where performers could relax before or after their performances. The plan was that Lena would sit here and watch my performance from the audience while I was on stage. I will likely remain on stage after my speech to participate in the panel discussion and answer questions from the audience. Strangely, neither of us planned to do anything after the conference. "Do you want to have dinner after my speech?" I asked her. She looked startled. "I don't think so," I said. "Danny, we might have other plans after," she said nervously. I nodded sadly as she tried to straighten my tie. "I think you're sorry we didn't have sex last night, huh?" she whispered. "Not at all," I said. "It probably won't be any better than last time." "What the hell does that mean?" she snapped. Her voice was louder than it should have been, and several people not only heard her, but also turned to look at her. I started walking towards the stage and saw a man enter the preparation room on the side of the stage. Lena looked like she had been struck by lightning. She tried to hide it, but I saw her reaction. I just shook my head and walked towards the stage. "I won't get a good luck kiss," she asked. "People make their own luck," I said. "Besides, you should probably save your kisses for someone else." "Danny, what the—" She looked at me with the most puzzled expression on her face. I just ignored her and walked towards the stage. Maggie Stevenson was the final speaker for the afternoon session. She was 2 speakers after me. It was perfect for my plans. After what I saw, I knew who Sebastian was. He'll probably be on stage when I perform or shortly after. My plan was to stay on stage after my speech and wait for him to enter the preparation room while the next speaker spoke. When Sebastian comes into the preparation room, I will confront him and arrange everything so that he signs the documents, and I give him a check or cash if necessary. I also knew that deep in my heart, I really hoped that Lena wouldn't fall for his bait. If she could just stay away from that bastard, maybe in time we could even. But no, obviously this Sebastian was like catnip to her. She just couldn't resist him. Maybe she really loved me as much as she claimed, but there were things she couldn't live without. I had my Mustang, maybe Sebastian had hers. I waited while the speaker spoke in front of me. She praised the value of a series of seminars designed to help freelance salespeople increase their sales. We've all heard this 1,000 times. It seemed like a scam to me. They gave you a pep talk and some self-care tips. You felt better, which boosted your confidence, and in turn, you tried harder to make the sale. As a result, you sold more. You could have done it yourself. The applause was polite when she finished, and then the host introduced my company and me. My PowerPoint presentation was pre-loaded into their projector. I used a laser pointer to navigate it. I performed much better than I thought. I wasn't nervous at all. I joked several times and the audience loved it, stopping several times to answer questions about our products or the benefits of a new manufacturing process. I answered so many questions that the host reminded the audience that there were other speakers, and there would be time for questions during the panel discussion. I saw that my boss and the CEO of our company were in the audience giving me a thumbs up. Part of the reason I was so talkative and relaxed was that I really didn't care about the performance. It didn't matter to me anymore. The whole time I was on stage, I was watching Lena, who was watching Sebastian. I finished and received thunderous applause just as she stood up and followed that bastard into the preparation room. That's it for our future together, I thought angrily. I immediately saw red and stood up to follow her. Last time I let them play their dirty game. I wasn't going to put up with that crap this time. I left the stage and calmly walked towards the preparation room. It took a few moments to get from the stage to the other side of the room, which should give them time to get started. I pulled the door open and closed it behind me. The room was much larger than I thought, and the light was dim. "Listen, Sebastian," I shouted. "To hell with you and with her. You can take this woman of easy virtue. I'm done with her. If you sign these documents, not only will I not sue you, I will pay you $60,000. My eyes finally found them in the darkness. I was so shocked that at first I didn't realize what was happening. My eyes got even bigger when I realized what was happening. "No, Danny, no," she said. "I can explain everything." At that moment, I heard a sound from the far corner of the room, but I was still in shock from what was happening to Lena. "Lena, what are you doing?" I asked, still in shock. The door to the side of the room opened, and the same fat policeman who was there when I saved Lena came out, still pulling up his pants. "She beat him with that pipe," he said. The door behind me opened and Maggie Stevenson entered the room to prepare for her speech. Her eyes widened as she looked around the room and saw Sebastian on the floor with Lena still standing over him, looking guilty. "Danny," Lena said. "Sebastian, what's going on here?" Maggie asked. "Ooh," Sebastian moaned. "I need an ambulance. This crazy woman came into the room and started beating me." Lena kicked him furiously. "Miss, can you explain your actions?" asked the policeman. "Because I came in here to use the restroom instead of the one outside. I have irritable bowel syndrome, and sometimes it hurts to walk. I saw her come in after this guy, and how he said it, started hitting him. I wanted to try to stop her, but I couldn't get out with my pants down, and I needed to wipe myself. Then this guy came in and started talking about making him sign some documents. Do you know?" "These two know each other," I said. "Wait a minute," said the policeman. "I know you too." He pointed at Lena and me. "Yes," I said. "This guy is the one she left me for. He deceived me and stole all my money and left town, leaving me to pay for a lot of things he bought. According to the police, he did this to many women. The richer the better," Lena said. Maggie's eyes hardened and she shook her head. "Call your precinct and ask them to check it against the database," Lena said. "He should still have warrants in my file." "Is it true, Sebastian?" Maggie asked. He turned away from her. "I was impressed by your speech, Mr. Boone," Maggie said, taking the ring off her finger and throwing it on the floor. "Please, call me Daniel. My friends call me Danny," I said. "Perhaps we can collaborate in the future," she said, turning to leave. "Wait, Maggie," Sebastian shouted. "Looks like you lost your fiancé and got kicked by a girl on the same day, you sly one," the policeman said. "And if what this lady says is true, you're going to jail for a long time." "Danny, what are you doing here?" Lena asked. "And you called me a woman of easy virtue. What documents did you want him to sign? Were you following me? I guess I should have expected this. You will never trust me again, but it's my fault. What documents did he want me to sign?" She snatched the documents from me. "Listen, man," Sebastian said. "If you can convince this crazy woman to drop the charges against me, I'll sign the papers, plus drop the assault charges against her. We'll be even." Lena suddenly started laughing hysterically. "Danny, he won't sign anything. He can't, you idiot." Paramedics arrived and took Sebastian to the hospital. Lena was arrested and taken to the police station for registration. The last thing she said to me was, "See you at the station, don't waste our money, and don't let him trick you into signing something. I have a folder of documents in the top drawer of my dresser in the house. Can you bring it to me?" I was confused. I have to admit that I was relieved to find out that Lena didn't cheat on me this time, but I was still angry. It seemed like she didn't want me to have any rights to Ella. I quickly went home and took out the folder. I didn't look at the documents because I didn't have time. I called my lawyer and asked him to figure out how to get Lenz out on bail. 2 hours later, she was already being processed for release. My lawyer spoke with Sebastian's assigned public defender, and they came to an agreement. Lena was facing a charge of assault with intent to cause serious harm. She was confident that she could fight back. The charges against Sebastian were related to theft and fraud. He had more charges, but they were less serious. and the statute of limitations had probably already expired for some of them. The lawyers met and decided to drop all charges. I was angry. That bastard got what he deserved, Lena spat. And stay away from that Maggie. I didn't like the way she looked at you. Why should I care what you think? I spat out. You didn't make your lover sign the papers. She started laughing again. Lena, this is not funny, I said. What would happen to Ella if you died or became seriously ill? She would have stayed with her father, Lena said with a shrug. That is life. I couldn't understand how she could be so calm about it. Danny, stop the car, she said. We were near the park, so I turned into the parking lot. We got out of the car and walked to a park bench. Danny, we need to talk, she said. I've heard that before, I said. I won't like this, right? Danny, I've been talking to my doctor a lot lately. She referred me to a specialist. Have you noticed that I've been a little weird lately? I nodded. It's because you were excited to see Sebastian again, I said. But I think your relationship has gone bad. Maybe you don't love him as much as you thought. Maybe I don't like that bastard at all, she spat. Which would be different than last time, I said. Actually, it's just like last time, she spat. I have a condition, Danny. Most women go through this, but I have a particularly severe reaction. When I got pregnant, I became mentally unstable. I'm just not responsible for my actions. That's what happened last time. Hormone imbalance makes me do stupid things. I do things I would never do normally. So when you got pregnant with Ella, it made you attack Sebastian, and that's why he kicked you out last time? I asked. No, dumbass, she spat. Sebastian didn't get me pregnant. I was already pregnant when I left you, and I hadn't slept with him yet. I didn't know I was pregnant then. I also didn't know about my condition, which makes me mentally unstable. Stupid thing, what I did last time was that I believed his bullshit and left you. It didn't make sense. Why would I leave you for someone else? Sebastian offered a way out of his madness. But as I kept telling you, as soon as I left, I realized that I had made a mistake. So, I asked, I have a daughter? No, dumbass, she said. You have 2 children. I think this one will be a boy. But Ella is mine? I asked, still in shock. She nodded. I scrunched my face in anger. Why didn't you ever tell me? I've told you quite a lot, Danny, she said. But honestly, since we moved in with you, I've heard the same thing every damn day. Her voice became deeper and hoarse as she tried to imitate my voice and manner of speaking. I don't trust that damn Lena. She's a woman of easy virtue. She left me. So if that was your attitude towards me, why would you believe anything I say? She asked. The document folder was right on my dresser. Have you ever looked in it? Why would I answered. She picked up one of the documents. Danny, you've loved this little girl since you helped bring her into the world. She calls you daddy every day and you love it. But you never even asked what her full name was. You went from calling her baby Lena to baby to Ella. Here's her birth certificate. I was shocked. Not only was I listed as the father, but Ella wasn't just Ella. Her full name was Daniela Kay. Boone Lena named her after me. The smile on my face was huge until I noticed that Lena was not smiling. So you really thought I wanted to go back to that bastard? She asked. I nodded. That's why you didn't want to have sex with me last night, right? I nodded again. You still don't trust me, right? I shook my head. Well, you have decisions to make, mister, she said, looking at me. Danny, I'm with you, and I put up with all your crap because I love you. She stopped and looked at me. I love you, and from now on I will tell you that whenever I want. And you know what? Regardless of whether you trust me or not, you love me too. Danny, you could have left me in the hospital until Ella was born. Or you could have sent me back to the shelter any time, but you didn't. So you can admit it. You love me too. I guess you might not like what I did, but now you can understand how. I can do stupid things when I'm pregnant. People in the park watched as this little woman poked me in the face and told me off. And you need to start being more responsible. How much money do we have in savings? You were going to try to buy your own daughter from that bastard, even though she's not even his. We need that money. Are you going to give up your home office for a new baby? Because if not, that means I'll have to move in with you. That means the two of us will have to share a room. No sending me back to my room when you're mad at me, and maybe we could spend some of that money on vacation and... I finally silenced her by kissing her. Perhaps we could even get married again, I asked. Her smile lit up the park, but then she frowned. Danny, it will be up to you, she said quietly. I know what I want, but you need to feel like you can trust me and that I'm the one you want to be with forever. But next time I get pregnant and go crazy, just tie me down or kick my ass. This won't go away because it will be much less painful than losing you again. Let's go home before your daughter drives your sister-in-law crazy. That was 2 weeks ago, and I've been trying to make a decision ever since, I said. And I have to admit, Lena really fooled me twice. The second time I was sure she would leave me again. But I'm glad I was wrong. My life is much better with her than without her. The old man in front of me looked at me as if he couldn't help me decide. So should I buy the ring or not? I asked. Do you love her? He asked. Yes, I answered. Have you forgiven her? He asked. Yes, I said a little hesitantly. Do you trust her again? He asked. I'm not sure I'll ever be able to trust anyone the way I trusted her, I said. She might get pregnant again and go crazy. 2 out of 3 isn't bad, he said. I'll wrap it for you. Will it be cash or credit card? Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think. Click to the next one. 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 Click to the next one.